All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about a huge shift at Apple. I mean, this is a big one. For the first time in 15 years, someone new is taking the wheel at the world's most valuable tech company. So what's this all going to mean for Apple's future? Let's break it down. So how did this news drop? Well, it all started with this really reflective memo from Tim Cook to all of his employees. And he kicked it off by looking way back to that incredibly difficult moment in 2011 when he took over from Steve Jobs. It really set the tone for what has to be one of the most successful CEO runs in, well, ever. And then came the big news. On April 20th, 2026, Apple made it official this amazing chapter is coming to a close. Cook is stepping down, and that clears the way for only the fourth CEO in the company's entire history. But look, before we get to who's next, we have to talk about the scale of what Tim Cook actually built. His legacy is it's defined by numbers that are almost hard to believe. Okay, so let's set the scene. Back in 2011, when Cook takes the reins, Apple is already a behemoth, right? A massive company, by any measure, valued at around $350 billion. But under his watch, that value just went into another stratosphere. We're talking about a 1,000% increase. That pushed Apple's value up to a staggering $4 trillion. He didn't just make the company bigger, he turned a giant into a global force of nature. And this wasn't just some stock market fantasy. The business itself grew like crazy. Yearly revenue almost quadrupled while he was in charge, which is just a testament to his absolute genius at scaling a business on a global level. And of course, it's about the stuff we all have in our pockets and on our desks. Some people always said, well, he never launched the next iPhone, but come on, he created entirely new categories that changed the world. Think about the Apple Watch. AirPods, they're literally everywhere. And he built the services business into something so huge, it's like a Fortune 40 company all on its own. So, that's the legacy. The big question now is, who on earth can fill those shoes? Well, his name is John Ternus. And this is the most important thing to get about this whole transition. It's a fundamental change in leadership style. Tim Cook was the master of supply chains, the operations wizard. John Ternus, he is, deep down in his DNA, a products and hardware engineer. And don't think for a second he's some outsider they brought in. Nope. Ternus is an Apple lifer. He's a 25-year veteran who's been climbing the ladder in the company's most important division since way back in 2001. Actually, chances are you've used a bunch of products he's been behind. His fingerprints are all over some of Apple's biggest hits. He was right there for the very first iPad, he led the hardware for every generation of AirPods, and get this, he was the guy who drove that massive, game-changing switch to Apple's silicon for the Mac. The man knows product. And Tim Cook himself gave him the strongest possible endorsement in that memo. He talked about his vision, his character, just a really powerful vote of confidence for his successor. But here's the thing, Ternus isn't just inheriting a super successful company. He's walking into a whole new world of challenges, ones that are totally different from what Tim Cook had to deal with when he started. First off, the leadership team itself is getting a shakeup. Tim Cook isn't just riding off into the sunset, he's sticking around as executive chairman, probably to help handle all the tricky global politics. And at the same time, Johny Srouji, the wizard behind all of Apple's amazing chips, he's getting a bigger role as chief hardware officer. So what exactly are these big challenges this new team has to deal with? Well, the tech world today is basically a minefield of new technology and really intense scrutiny from all sides. When you boil it down, Ternus is facing 4 huge hurdles. First, AI. Apple's playing catch-up, and that's a high-stakes game. Second, regulation. Governments everywhere are breathing down their necks. Third, competition is just brutal right now from rivals who are trying to define the next big thing. And finally, he's got to manage all of that with a recently rebuilt leadership team after a whole bunch of top execs left in the last few years. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one huge question. The Tim Cook era, that was all about mastering scale and operations. It was about excellence. Now, with a true product engineer in the driver's seat, are we about to see a return to that disruptive, product-led innovation that first made Apple, Apple? That's the real story, and it's one we're all going to see unfold in the years ahead.